Reason Podcast does not believe in curses or hexes and is unconcerned with what offends you. We do not believe that words have the power to compel spirits or demons to affect your life in any way. If you do, well, there is a reason why the explicit tag is there.
Listening to Reason Podcast. Reason. To think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic.
Hello, and welcome to Reason. Today is Sunday, February 10th, and this episode is entitled, Today we have David Mcafee, or Mcafee, as our special guest. Since we cannot have two Davids, we've decided to change David, our sound engineer, change his name to Potato McButterworth.
If you're gonna call me Potato McButterworth the whole time, I'm just gonna leave.
How is Potato McButterworth not an absolutely perfect name for you?
Perhaps we'll call you DW. I'm Joshua Billingsley with Paul Whitmire. And
I'm sorry, how you doing?
And Potato McButterworth, or DW. And this podcast is coming to you live from sunny Buffalo, New York. Reason Podcast is a weekly discussion of events, current and historical, from a skeptical, a rational, and a non-theological perspective. Reason Podcast is brought to you by the Offensive Atheists and the atheist community of Buffalo and Western New York. For further information, please visit our blog and website at wnyatheist.org or email us at reason@wnyatheist.org.
I'm sorry, I could not stop laughing at Potato McButterworth.
Yeah, you came up with Potato McButterworth, and I got to be honest with you, I don't see as much humor in that as you do. I mean, I like to mock and ridicule David as much as the next guy.
Well, I think I've established on this show that I am an absolute 4-year-old.
This is true. This is quite true.
Pretty much.
And again, we have our special guest today. We've got him on the line. Actually, Paul, why don't we just bring him right in?
Sure.
Let's say hello to David.
All right. Hopefully this will work. We have faith in technology.
Tons faith in technology.
That's right.
Hallelujah.
David. Oh, wonderful.
This is David Mcafee. Mcafee, by the way.
McAfee. See, that's what we've been saying, but somebody said, "Are you sure it's McAfee and not McAfee?" And we went, and that's where it all went downhill. It sort of snowballed into a catastrophe. But we were assuming that one.
Understandable.
So, David, we've got you on the line here specifically to discuss your most recent book, but a little bit about yourself as well, and a little bit about the journey you've gone on. First off, your book is "Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist." This is a book about coming out. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yep. About it's a guide to coming out as a non-believer.
Yes, indeed. And this is not as important to me personally, since I was raised as what I like to call a non-practicing Unitarian. So there was no real question when I came out. They went, okay.
How do you non-practice Unitarianism? I'm just saying.
I went to the Unitarian church a couple times when I was a kid and, realized that it was, just something to do Sunday mornings, and nobody really cared. They read, Cosmopolitan magazine or something. I don't know what it was. Really? Not particularly. Nothing happened.
David, I think you have an interesting audience here for us, because there's Josh, who is a non-practicing Unitarian. there is myself, Paul Whitmire, who is I was raised Catholic. I was raised Christian, and or whether or not you consider Catholic to be Christian is a debatable topic.
Which I still don't think it's a debatable topic, but that's neither here nor there.
The point is, coming out to my family was a matter of me saying, "Oh, I've started a website," and they were like, "What is the website?" WNYAtheist.org, and they were like, pretty much, okay. And then we have David, or
David.
I'm sorry,
DW.
Potato McButterworth.
Yes, indeed.
Who is still dealing with the whole issue of coming out with his family. So I think we have the entire spectrum of dealing with understanding what it is like to come out to your family and explain that whole process.
Now,
And believe it or not, I think that the book can actually offer something for all of you and pretty much anyone, regardless of where you are on that journey. The book is called Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, but it does deal with issues that go beyond just dealing with family and religious issues, because as I'm sure all of you guys know, religious subjects also come up in professional work life. It also comes up in social life, and it comes up in educational circles. So I talk about how to deal with those issues in other contexts as well, because as some people are raised as non-practicing Unitarians, it's also helpful to be able to deal with those conflicts in other venues too.
Indeed, I know at the job I actually currently have, my day job, I had a young lady there who was very upset that I was an atheist until I said, I guess I was upset about something. I said, Jesus Christ. And she hung her hat on that one, that I clearly couldn't be all atheist. I exclaimed,
Really?
I exclaimed, Jesus Christ. So that satisfied it for her.
Even though you blasphemed his name in vain, that counts as kind of believing.
Yeah, she's not a particularly good Christian anyway, so. But we got a chance to take a look at your book, and it's very good. I think David's situation may be slightly more intense. David D.W. here. His situation may be slightly more intense than some of them mentioned in the book, except, of course, for the more extreme chapter where you get into a little bit of sort of the crazy stuff that still goes on in the world.
Yeah, I'm not going to get put in jail.
No.
Well, David is kind of our test case on this whole situation because, correct me if I'm wrong, you were raised by a very religious family.
Yes, Evangelical Covenant.
Who also, your father is a preacher.
Yes, he
if
is.
I'm not mistaken.
Yes, pastor my entire life, yes.
Preacher, pastor, really?
He's been called pastor, yes.
Do I have to punch you again?
Certainly, yeah.
Because I have not punched David several times today.
Yes, it's been a rousing afternoon preparing for the show. Now, just to begin, you're a theologian of sorts. I mean, that you went to school for theology.
I actually didn't study theology. No, that's the study of Christianity from the Christian perspective. I studied religious studies. I majored in religious studies, so I have my bachelor's degree in religious studies with an emphasis in Christianity and Mediterranean religions. So I studied more like the history of religions and comparative tradition. I learned a lot about creation myths, and in my studies, I learned about Christianity alongside every other religion, alongside Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism. So it wasn't set aside at all in my studies, and I think that's how, that type of study really does help shape a secular outlook, because you see that it's not special, it's just more popular in the society that you happen to live in.
Well, let me ask you: were you an atheist going into it, or were you non-religious going into it, or was it a little of both?
I've been an atheist and non-religious all my life. I was raised in a Christian home, but it wasn't. It just never took for me. I mean, I was 13 years old, and I was going to church, and like you described earlier, I thought it was just sort of a pastime that people had, and I didn't understand that people took it seriously. But once I found out that my grandparents, who took me to church, did take it seriously, they tried to force me to go to church more, and if anything, that really spawned my interest in learning more about the contradictions of the Bible, and it made me want to study it on my own and learn why people think these things are true. And then, so from then on, people knew I was an atheist starting about 13, 14 years old, and my family didn't have a great reaction, but it blew over pretty quickly after about a year, and it just became another part of my personality. So I went into college with that context, and nobody was really surprised when I told them I was going to major in religious studies. They just kind of expected that after what I'd done as a kid, always interested in learning about religions and going to different churches and things like that, just to be a silent observer.
All right. Now, let me see. You've had some conflict in the past. I mean, not necessarily with your family, not much, I guess, but you've had some conflict in your past. In fact, I'm going to take the quote directly from your book there. Are you an atheist? An atheist activist with an axe to grind? Is that what you are?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I definitely wouldn't say I have any axe to grind, but I am an atheist activist, and I am an advocate for secularism wherever I go. But that particular incident was in college. It was after I had already graduated with my bachelor's degree in religious studies, and I loved the school. I loved the classes I had taken. I was interested in pursuing a master's PhD program. So I applied for the program, and I met with the dean of admissions who would decide my fate. And in the meeting, she seemed very nice until she Googled my name, and I was watching the screen pull up my Amazon book reviews for my first book, Disproving Christianity and Other Secular Writings.
Yeah, it's pretty clear what that is.
Yeah. So she just, even though this work had nothing to do with my studies at school, had nothing to do with anything that I had done at the college, she looked at me right after that and said, I don't think you'll fit in with this department's milieu because you're an atheist activist with an axe to grind. And I was stunned, and I asked her, I tried to explain myself. I told her that there are plenty of, for example, Christian missionaries who are in that program, and they would be considered Christian activists. They're more activists for Christianity than I am for secularism. And that didn't really go anywhere, so I started writing about it online, and eventually I got enough enough letters of support to the Office of Student Affairs at UC Santa Barbara that I was eventually granted a meeting with the Office of Student Affairs, and they launched an investigation, and I was offered a formal letter of apology, which I then took and got out of there.
Did you, by the way, did you frame the letter?
I did not frame the letter, but I did put it in the book. It's photocopied in the book, so that's immortalized in that manner.
Very good. Now, also, I believe, Paul, just as the other side of it, you found on David's Facebook page, you found a quote saying just the opposite, right?
I did, in fact. Just to, I'm looking at my notes right now. Fake atheist radical extremists, which I would say defines not only yourself, but Josh and myself, David, or
DW, you mean?
Yes, DW.
Mick Butterworth.
What have you.
So there's some controversy. We've experienced it, and I'm sure you have felt the whole brunt of being someone who's out there in terms of being atheist. It seems to be something, it seems to be a position that people attack very readily.
It definitely puts a target on my head at being an open-out secular advocate wherever I go, and it's not something that I try to hide in any venue that I'm in. So yeah, those allegations, those random name calling, things like that, I've gotten used to that. Although today was a little bit odd in that I received an email, a kind of a cryptic email, and the body of the message only said that bowed heads don't get chopped off, and that was
really?
So,
I guess
so I'm not exactly sure what to read into that, but that's a little out of the ordinary. Normally, it's typically just accusing me of being a Satanist or an advocate for Satan or something like that. But,
of course.
That was different.
Well, everyone knows that we are completely and totally behind a demon with 3 heads, a leg made of bronze,
and Hitler,
who will and Hitler,
of course, and Hitler. We can't forget Hitler.
Who will completely fool us into believing that he is Bill Clinton, and take the guise of Sarah Palin and run towards Alaska or something.
I believe that's Revelations in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's very near right.
Wait, Alaska's cold.
Yes, it is.
Well, if he came from hell, he'd probably want to go to Alaska just for like the change of seasons. It's nice.
Okay.
But
we can go with that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but David, and not Potato McButterworth, just to make that clear. So, just starting from the beginning, there is the question in your book of why come out to your various readers. Can you kind of give us a summary of what's going on there?
Yeah, of course. There are a few different questions people are asking when they ask, why should I come out? They're asking, first, what's the personal reason? Why should I personally come out? And the best answer for that, I mean, obviously everyone's situation is different, so it's really specific, but I like to play up the fact that honesty is really important in relationships, and I think people understand that being honest about who you are with your family should come before any petty disputes that might result as because of those differences. So that's a pretty easy one. As far as on a broader context, why I encourage everyone to come out, or everyone who can safely come out to do so, is because, as we just talked about, people really don't understand what atheism is, and there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of negative connotations, and there's a lot of misinterpretations about what being an atheist means. We just talked about how we all are accused of being Satanists and worshiping Satan and other crazy things, but that's
which we do,
funny, of course. Also, which we do, of course. And it's funny, but it's also sad that people actually have those thoughts. And the more people that come out, we can change those. We can show that your son, your daughter, your aunt, your cousin, your neighbor could be an atheist, and it doesn't affect their moral compass, and it doesn't change who they are to you, and it doesn't mean that they treat you any differently. It just means that they don't believe in any deities, and it's really no bigger than that. Exactly.
It provides good PR for us in general, I think, is what it is regular people, just like the gays with the homosexuals coming out, the big movement. Again, it's just to show you that, there are people, regular people that that you like, that are gay. So it's really not as much of a big deal as your book may have told you. But I'd like to move on, Paul, if you don't mind. There's a particular section that I found interesting, especially considering that old DW's perspective. You have to say in the book, in chapter 6, Timing is Everything, you discuss specifically that earlier is better. And why is that? Why do you believe that's the case? I mean, can't you just let it sit and let them slowly figure it out when you sort of stop going to church and when you don't wear the cross or bow your head at meals, just sort of giving them a little bit as it goes along? Why is it better to be earlier? And I know it has something to do, I'm sure, with being
eat bacon. Right.
Depending on which one it is, yeah.
In some situations, you'd be exactly right. I mean, like I said before, everyone's different. I wrote that chapter from personal experience because I was a skeptic from very young age, as we talked about. And when I first realized that I wasn't just an atheist, but I was actually against religion in its organized forms, I was no longer okay with everyone just assuming that I was religious or fundamentally religious like my grandparents were, and I felt it was important to at least make it known. And I wasn't rude about it. I didn't cause any conflict at all, actually. I was very logical and reasonable and friendly and tried to show them exactly what I talk about in the book, that it hasn't changed me as a person. I was actually never a believer, and I told them that. I told them that when I did go to church that I didn't take it seriously. And it really did blow over after a very short period of time. And from the testimonials that I took for the book for publishing and from other people that I've spoken with, they've had similar experiences where if they got it out of the way earlier on, their family got used to it quicker and it became just another aspect of their personality. Now, if you're already an adult and you're out of the house and it doesn't come up as often, then the other situation might come up where you want to just let them figure it out and not be as direct and forthcoming about it. But as I was living in their home and I had those experiences, I just felt the need to get it out and be honest as early as possible.
Yeah, that was much more my perspective. My mother was, one of those people that believed in made-up stuff, but she didn't believe particularly strongly. In fact, when I guess came out, the worst that I got was my cousin said, "But all the atheists on the internet are assholes." And I said, "Well, yes, but everyone on the internet's an asshole." And that was the extent of my coming out trauma. I think Paul's was much more similar to yours, that he just never really believed and didn't actually ever. There was no revelation. He just sort of petered out.
Well, that is true. I actually had this experience when I was about 12 years old, where I was in catechism and I went to confession, and I decided to confess everything. And I did. And the priest was like, well, thank you for being honest, and really had no kind of useful advice or anything that really changed my life in any way, shape, or form.
That surprises me.
Yeah, well, it's a shocking experience when you decide to completely be, I'm just laying myself out there, and the answer was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You didn't find saying 5 Hail Marys made you feel all better and get rid of all your guilt for all of your sins? None of that happened?
Okay, truth be told, the penance that I was given, I didn't do. 'Cause I'm a horrible human being. But, yeah, and in the end, it just seemed like, that doesn't seem like it's going to fix everything. And truth be told, it didn't.
But what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, David, is I'd like to spend a little bit of time on DW here, the other
Sure.
David we have on, specifically with his situation, because he has not come out to his family.
As long as you call him Potato McButterworth.
I really don't think that's going to stick as well as you think it is.
I'm really trying.
You're putting in the old college try. It's good for
I
you.
really am.
But no, David was raised by, I'm calling him fundamentalist, yes? No?
Yes, yeah, they're
Okay.
fundamentalists. Yeah, my father's a fundamentalist preacher, and my mother obviously is his lackey. And both of my brothers are married and have kids, and they are all, being very fundamentalist as well. I guess one of them's not as bad. But anyway, and actually, recently I was on a vacation with them, and they were talking about a previous time where my father was a pastor for our church, and they found a blasphemer in the church. And basically what his blasphemy was that there were 5 crosses on the hill with Jesus. Well, one of them was Jesus, and then there were 2 thieves on either side because of a certain passage in the Bible. And as far as I could tell, they kicked him out of the church for that.
So you
So
see
my
David's
question
situation.
is-
Wait, hang on. I'm confused.
Yeah, I forgot to even mention this before now.
Apparently so. So there were 4 thieves.
There's supposed to be 3.
Yes, I understand
2
that.
thieves and Jesus.
Yes. And one of them particularly sold heaven because that's what he did.
Yes.
But
But yeah, there was a particular passage in the Bible where they went to the first thief, and then they went to the second thief, and then they went to Jesus. And the problem is they say, well, why would they go around Jesus to go to the second thief and then come back to Jesus? And I was like, who fucking cares? Jesus died on the cross. Isn't that the point of your story? Not how many thieves there are?
Yep.
So anyway, that's how bad they are.
Okay.
So in that situation, what would you
in a
suggest?
situation like that, I mean, the boy,
that's a clear question.
as we call David, the boy does
Yeah, I don't know
love
how
his
to-
family and does want to continue having
Yes.
contact with them, but they
Oh,
seem,
yeah. There's that.
somewhat extreme in that respect. And the book didn't have anyone with quite that situation. You went again from some run-of-the-mill, some basic stuff that a lot of people probably have to deal with, and then of course you cover the more extreme. But he's in a situation here, and in case you're wondering, he can't follow my tactic of just let it go for a while.
No.
Because he's got a small child who's going to learn how to speak soon.
Well, yeah.
I mean, properly, and that's going to cause him problems. So he's got a ticking, pardon me calling your child this, a ticking time bomb of atheism that's taunting him and haunting him. And he's in a position, we've been trying to help him, but we don't have any good ideas.
And just to I'm sorry, just to clarify, we love David to death. He's been a member of Reason Podcast for a while now, and he is an atheist, as far as I know, and he comes from this incredibly fundamental family, and he has not yet come out to that incredibly fundamental family. And we make fun of him because he's short and he smells like cheese, but
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yes. But that's the situation that he's in. And, you've got some experience. You've spoken to a lot of people, so you've got a lot of perspectives. I mean, between Paul and myself, we tried to give him as much help as we could, but, when push comes to shove, I mean, shouldn't he just expect to go in there and have the place burned down around him, so to speak?
I really hope not. So do they have any idea, first of all, do they have access to podcasts? I hope not. But also, do they have any idea that you're a skeptic at all? They just think that you're a fundamentalist believer just like they are?
Yes. Yeah, last time, or when we were on the vacation, they said, oh, well, normally we, at family gatherings, we say, the two topics that are hands off are politics and religion. But in our case, everyone's a Christian. So, no, they think I'm a Christian. Because I actually still go to church currently.
He still goes to church.
Because I.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I play music for money there. That's why.
So it's not just his family; it's his livelihood.
Is there anyone else in your family, perhaps a distant relative or a close family friend, who is a non-believer or non-religious or not as enthusiastic about the religion? Anyone you might think might be sympathetic to your cause? That's something that I always recommend finding someone closer to that.
The answer would be no, except for maybe one which I have no clue about, but I'm not going to bring it up with because I don't know them well enough.
Got it. Well, in the book, I do talk about that, trying to find out if there's anybody who you may have overlooked and not understood, because they can help mediate that situation. But in the end, I mean, it really comes down to, if you're sure that you'd like to tell them, then to organize it. I don't want it to sound like an intervention kind of bombarding, but to make it sound like you actually care about telling them, and make it sound like you care, that you're that it's something that you think that it will have an impact on your relationship, but that you will show them that it doesn't. I think that's the most important, the key that I'm trying to get across, is to have them understand that it's not something that's going to change, other than maybe, I assume, you'll stop going to church, but that it won't change how you act or how you take care of your family or how you interact with them, and to kind of underline that. And if they get angry or upset, then having someone mediate, or a counselor, a therapist. I also list a bunch of secular therapists for this type of more extreme situation as well. Then I definitely recommend getting a professional involved if that's the case. But you'd be surprised, a lot of people who have similar situations like you, actually their family did understand, and they kind of walked away with it with a different outlook, but not hating one another, and definitely not ending in cursing each other or anything like that.
Huh.
Yeah,
well, that's hopeful.
So, back to the book directly, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You've covered. There's a lot of testimonials in here, and of course you don't want to give everything away, because people should still go out and buy the book. Again, Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist. A Guide to. Oh my God! Every single time I mess up the subtitle of your book, I apologize.
It's the guide to coming out as a non-believer.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I read it wrong the first time, and it's been screwing me up ever since. I actually have, and I apologize. And it is available on Amazon, and it's a pretty good read.
Well, David, if you should be aware, we don't consider Josh to be very smart.
No. I'm really the dumb one of the bunch here. That's no doubt about that. But in the book, you have some interesting testimonials, and are there any that that ring true? Anything that would resonate, possibly not just with David, but with the audience in general? Because there's a lot of people out there that are in a similar sort of situation. Are there any other experiences that you heard from people that would be helpful to a general skeptic who just no longer has a theological underpinning?
Yeah, definitely. I personally, I think the testimonials, I included 6 testimonials in the book specifically because my story is a little bit different than most people, especially most atheist activists were probably born into a very religious family, and most of them were even involved in ministry and then eventually changed. But I kind of went the opposite way. I was never a believer at all. So I thought it was important to seek out those testimonials, and they include a testimonial from a man and wife who both became atheists at different times. So the wife was a believer, or the wife was an atheist first, and was unable to tell her husband because she was so scared that he would look down on her and hate her and think she's going to hell. But then when she finally got up the courage to tell him, she found out that he was having some of the same doubts that she was in their faith. And that's a really interesting story. We include both of theirs in there. There's another one about there's three more that are just about exactly what you're describing, just basic atheists who found out they were non-religious. Either they came from Unitarian, non-practicing families or non-religious families altogether, and they talk about their experiences that relate to outside family issues. And the book also has a chapter dedicated to religion and grief, where I talked to a young woman who lost her baby when it was 5 months old, and she dealt with that grief in a secular way and talked about that in the book as well, talking about the scientific answers and the secular support groups that are helpful for those situations. So other ways that people have to deal with atheism in their daily lives. So I talk about that as well.
You mentioned specifically the religion and grief, and I know there's a Grief Beyond Belief, which is a website. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of really good stuff. But you did touch on, at least to some degree in the book, something which hit home with me. My mother died just a couple of years ago, and she died a little young, which is, unpleasant. It's nowhere near similar to a child dying, of course, but a person dying outside of the socially prescribed period of time is always upsetting. And how many people said to me, she's in a better place, that all these things, and just my deep-rooted urge to punch them in the eye was overwhelming. And that seems to be sort of universal, that when people try and give you the bullshit answer that's supposed to make you feel better, that's more of an insult to you and your loss. I would think even if you were a Christian or religious in general, you'd still be lamenting the loss, at least your own loss of the person, the contact, the child or parent or sibling or what have you. Did that?
And it's
mm-hmm.
It's really surprising to me that people don't think of that before they say those things, that they don't think about how it would be taken from anyone's perspective. But like you said, even from a Christian perspective, saying, oh, he's in a better place now, it sounds like you're excusing the act of the death, making it sound like it's not a big deal. But honestly, in those situations, I don't really think that most Christians deep in their hearts believe the things that they say, that otherwise they wouldn't be so sad at funerals. They wouldn't have the same reactions that we do at funerals. They would be happy at the momentous occasion that their family member was getting to join this elite heaven group and know for a fact that they'll see him again eventually, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's been my argument for quite a while. You wouldn't be sad if people died because they're in heaven and paradise with Jesus. So you're a liar. But, that argument doesn't go over well with folks.
Especially when they're mourning the death of a loved one.
Yeah, which, if they're mourning, then clearly there's something
then you make
going
fun
on.
of it.
I don't. I think it in my head. I don't say it out loud.
Oh, it's a difficult thing because there is the idea of why aren't you happy? Because your loved one is in paradise with flowers and angels and everything like that. But you can't say that.
But the bastard left me behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And suicide is a hell-worthy offense. So you can't join them.
Yeah, but there are loopholes, though. There are loopholes. You could step out in front of a truck. That's a Bible loophole. That's not suicide, and you still get into heaven.
Yeah. I would have to say,
really?
Were I God, I'd be like, yeah, it's bullshit. I'm not taking that. That's tricky business. I'm not going to take it. You're going to hell, and you're going to burn for eternity for a limited sin. Eternal punishment always seemed sort of batshit crazy to me.
Well, Josh and I both work in law, so it'd be interesting to have that court case.
I was just about to say they should retain a lawyer. I was just about to say someone say, well, actually, I believe the clause in the Bible does say no suicide, God, but there is an exemption because it was an accident that
Yep, absolutely.
I'm just not observant.
Yeah. Oops.
Truck? Me? Walking? I don't know. I was drunk. So, all right. Well, David, I wanted to ask you, so we have an interesting situation with our David here, who Potato McButterworth, and his whole situation. I'm really trying. But ultimately, have you talked to people who are in a similar situation, whose family members are involved specifically in religious upbringing and religious involvement?
Yeah, most people who seek out advice or who submitted coming out stories when I solicited them for my book, when I was going to publish a few of them, I published them all on my website. There was over 100 submissions, and almost all of them had some sort of element of religious not extremism, but adherence in their family, extreme adherence. Either they're involved in the ministry, or their parents were, or someone else in the family is, and it's a tricky situation, and it's something that comes up a lot. People who learn about the Bible tend to turn away from it, because if you learn about some of its contradictions, it can be it can be devastating to your faith. So it's something that comes up a lot, and there are clergy projects, for example, for people who themselves were in the ministry and just realized that they were atheists and can't just give up your job at that point, so they have to go to support groups for that. So it really is a common problem, but like I said before, you'd be surprised how many of those had positive experiences when they more positive than they thought it would be when they came out as an atheist to their religious family members.
Yeah, I know. In the book, you also mentioned being prepared, and again, not having any kind of necessity myself. I just went through life doing what I was doing. What kind of preparedness? I mean, what sort of, do you backstop? Do you start ahead of time? You 6 months earlier, questioning or saying, "Hey, so he lived in a big fish for how long? That seems crazy, right?"
It was a whale.
Yeah, well, it was a big fish.
Or a big fish.
But I mean, is that something? Is that part of the preparedness? Sort of initially showing that you're having doubts, or
that's actually a good point. That's something that I do briefly mention in the book. But when I talked about preparedness, it's something that I like you didn't have to deal with, because I just was never a believer. But when I was talking to other people who have been in those situations, and their most common regret was that they said they'd wish they'd gone into it being more prepared. They wish they had anticipated what their parents' questions would be better, their family's questions or their friends' questions would be. That's actually part of why I included a frequently asked questions section in the back of the book, where I just list the most commonly asked questions that I get from believers. So I thought it'd be helpful for people to read through those so that they can kind of form their own answers and understand that those are the types of things that might come up. So preparing for those, and then also preparing not to defend your lack of belief. It's not something that's necessarily always going to come up, but if you choose to do so, then it's something that comes in handy to bone up on arguments that you think might convince them that you're still a moral person. Basically just outline what you're going to say when it happens, as opposed to coming out as an atheist in spur of a moment on accident or during a religious discussion or in an angry way. It's just kind of a more thoughtful approach to it. It's what I'm trying to promote.
Oh, okay. Well, do you think how could we be more prepared? What could we do to prepare our family members for the coming news that I'm an atheist?
So that's what he just mentioned earlier about kind of gently joking about small inaccuracies or contradictions. That can be some way to do it. Usually,
right, okay.
Usually that can be seen through by most people. Depends on the situation, obviously. I recommend in those cases it's best to find someone else close to the family, like I mentioned before. Obviously, you don't have that luxury, but that's the first piece of advice that I usually give. Other than that, there's really no preparation. You can be prepared in the moment. You can have things ready for them to read. I think I've had a lot of people who said that giving their family members my book to read actually helped them, even though it wasn't meant for that purpose. Because
actually, that was going to be my question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was actually, while reading the book, it occurred to me that it's actually a really good book to give to the religious or the theist, to let them know sort of where you're coming from, what your fears are, the sort of situation and the feelings that you may have. I actually think your book is fairly good for the religious family members, something that you can actually give them while you're talking about it, so they can refer to this and find out sort of the perspective you're coming from. I actually thought that was a very good use for your book.
I completely agree, and although it wasn't designed for that purpose, that's what a lot of people have told me. And I generally approach the idea of atheism and religion, I approach it with a more gentle approach than a lot of atheist activists who are more angry or hateful toward the church or toward religion. And I just really don't have that sort of vibe, and I convey that in the book, and I try to talk about how atheists are still moral people, and it has nothing to do with that. I talk about the true origins of morality, how it's evolved over time, and why each religion has their own moral code, and why stagnant moral codes are bad. And so a lot of people have said exactly that giving it to their family members and having them read through it really did show them what they were concerned with, and then where it dispelled a lot of the atheist myths that they might have, their preconceived notions they might have had about atheism. And so it really kind of covers all the bases there.
Well, that is something that we've dealt with repeatedly in doing the show, in having the website and the podcast and the blog that we do. I wanted to ask you. So we mentioned it earlier about a quote as I was looking at your Facebook page of fake atheist radical extremist. Now, this is something that Josh and David and I encounter frequently, which is the idea that someone who has the positions that we do is ultimately it seems to be attacking some sort of institution that isn't actually true, if you follow my meaning on that. Ultimately, what I'm asking is, fake atheist radical extremists, like, how do you respond to kind of the criticism that you get from being simply someone who declares themselves to be out there and saying that they don't believe that there is a God, and so on and so forth?
Generally, I ignore those types of things.
Okay.
I do point out in the book that the reason that being an atheist is so confrontational is because people think that, or because of the fact that when you're saying you don't believe in God, you're saying that everything that they've ever known is wrong.
Right.
So I understand that it's an area of conflict for a lot of people, and so when they say things like that to me, which, like you mentioned, it does happen a lot, I just kind of calmly explain to them what I do and why I do it, that I'm trying to promote free thought. I'm trying to keep a religion from encroaching on an otherwise secular or supposedly secular government and its legislature. And I'm doing these things not out of hate for their God or out of hate for their religion or any other hateful reason. I'm doing it because I think that it will make our society better, and I'm doing it because it's a realistic and honest approach to reality.
Yeah, that really is the best perspective to have on it. I mean, there's a lot of vitriol out there against the atheist and the word. I know a lot of people don't come out as an atheist; they come out as an agnostic because they don't know how words work.
Well, Josh and I actually did a research project on this, where we what was the name of the site? Do you remember?
I don't know what you're talking about, so no.
I'm talking about how atheism on the internet is like 93% bad.
Oh yeah, I did a quick
thinks,
search.
Or what the internet thinks.
Yeah, what the internet thinks. And it came up with atheism as being incredibly bad. It was like 98% negative, but agnosticism was like 60% positive.
Because people don't know what those words mean.
Yeah.
I actually talk about that in the book as well, and that I actually have a really close connection to. My best friend told his mom just less than a month ago that he was an atheist, and she was never a really super overtly religious person, so he wasn't expecting it to be confrontational at all. He was kind of thought it was a minor issue. And when he mentioned it, her reaction was that she was disappointed because if he had been at least an agnostic, she would have understood. But because he's an atheist, she now thinks that he's ruining his life. And he tried to explain to her that those words are not, those words cannot go, that they can go together. That he is
they're not
both
mutually
an agnostic
exclusive.
and an atheist. They're not mutually exclusive. And I have that same approach, and it's really difficult. Yeah, people don't understand those meanings at all. And even people who consider themselves quote agnostics will come to my Facebook page or my website or email me and say that I'm crazy for trying to prove there's no God and for thinking that I can know for sure there's no God, and it's something I've never had a debate with them. There's no discussion there. I acknowledge that. So moving on.
Well, how is your proof of there absolutely not being a God coming?
Yeah, well, I took a different approach. I published a book called Disproving Christianity, where I tackled the book itself, the holy book, the scriptures, the contradictions within.
The holy book?
And the practice. The holy book itself. Because while you can't prove there are no generalized deities that we have no evidence of in the first place, you can prove that the earth wasn't made 10,000 years ago, and you can disprove a lot of things that are said in the Bible, so that's the approach that I took.
I've always had a problem with the terminology because as an atheist, I have no theology, I have no theological underpinning. But additionally, and sort of added on to that, I also have a problem that I've discussed this with a lot of theists and a lot of Christians specifically, but a couple of Muslims and Jews, but primarily with Christians. But my problem is that, and I hate the terminology, but I'm going to use it anyway. I found myself to be more of an agnostic, and I looked it up and found out that there's a term for everything. That I am ignorant as to what you mean by God, and my problem is that discussing with the theist, it's always been sort of true that they are ignorant as well. They don't have a well filled out definition of what God is, which is part of the reason you can't disprove it. It's such a vague and unclear concept to them. It's just inherently good, but I don't know why. And that's always been a problem I had, which is why I decided to call myself an agnostic, even though it's a really incredibly stupid term.
It really is.
I think you make a really good point, and I think that I've heard that term before, and I've heard people use it before, and I think we can all agree that that's a good application, a good term, but it's just not something that's widely recognized, so it wouldn't be something that I could use and get away with it.
Right.
But thinking about it like that, the problem with definitions of gods is really a huge problem throughout all religions, because, like you said, they don't really know for sure what their God is, but they are sure that it's different from every other God. And I don't know how, but when I address a theist in a discussion or a debate, and we're talking rationally, and I'll refer to gods plural, and they'll want to specify that they're only talking about their specific God, but it really doesn't matter which one they're talking about, because the argument's going to be the same on no matter what it is. But the one thing they are sure about is that it's different from other deities, is that it's real, and that it's all loving. But yeah, they all have those same things, but you're right about it being an undefined variable, and I tried to ask them to define it any chance I get, because that's something that you can actually have to measure against reality and see if it's real or not, but that's not something that we're going to get.
Yeah, all loving except if you're a Canaanite or Job.
Yes, poor Job. But now
or really, if you're not born into their chosen race. I mean, if you're outside of the chosen people, then you're kind of boned too.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the case throughout all of the entire historical concept of the Bible is interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't your first book. Your first book, Disproving Christianity. Now, you gave a little bit of information on the impetus as to why you wrote it, but I mean, personally, what were you trying to do? Were you exercising your own demons, or were you really trying to do a manual for people that were, Christians or on the fence about Christianity? What was the purpose behind Disproving Christianity?
When I first went to college, I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I was majoring in religious studies and English, and I took a very interesting class called New Testament Literature. So we were looking at the New Testament, but it was strictly from a sense that it's that we would have looked at any book, any written book. So we looked at conflicts, we looked at contradictions in the text, and we looked at a lot of the different authors that clearly are unknown that people put fake author names on. So I learned all about that, and it really encouraged me, because in that class I realized these are things that people know. scholarly academics are teaching it in public universities. These are facts that are well known, but they're not well known within Christian communities. They don't know, for example, that the Bible tells you that you can only live to be 120 years old. That's the oldest that any human can live to be. And
unless you're Moses.
Unless you're after the flood, of course. No, but before that, you could live to be 900 years old. Methuselah and Adam, everyone more than 500 years old. But after the flood, you could only live to be 120, and we've had people who have gone to live longer than that.
Yes,
so
indeed.
that automatically, when I heard that, it made me realize that these are things that if I put together and compiled them into essays, and then it eventually turned into a book, then I could maybe convince some people, like you said, some Christians or fence sitters, or as I call cultural Christians, really the target of that book. And that's people who consider themselves Christians, but they haven't studied the Bible, they don't think about it all that often, and they usually adopt the label just because they're familiar with it or because their family and friends are Christians. And so I thought if I put those facts in front of them in a book, showing each of the contradictions in the Holy Text, that maybe some of them could drop the label and get out of that.
Yeah, I really actually, to be perfectly honest, enjoyed the first one better, but then again, I didn't have the situation for the second one. The second one, your Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, I actually found most interesting the first few chapters where you actually discuss why come out, atheists, what it means to be an atheist, that sort of thing. I found those chapters, even though the book itself didn't really apply very much to me in its general thesis, there were a lot of facts, there was a lot of information in there that I actually found quite useful for me as a non-practicing Unitarian.
I'm really glad, and that's what I'm trying to put out there as well, to try and get people to realize that it's not specifically for only people who are telling their family members they're religious. Although that's the target audience, there are people who deal with those issues in other variety of other contexts as well. So it really does apply to a lot more people than they think.
Well, it really does. I mean, Josh and I both work at a law firm, which has there is a religious underpinning to a lot of what we do. And not just there, but in all aspects of our lives. This is something we need to consider. Whether or not I come out as an atheist to any group that I'm first introduced to is something that I weigh with some concern.
Yeah. I remember going to a wedding recently, just maybe a couple of years ago now. But when everyone bowed their head for the prayer, I actually find it disrespectful to bow your head if you're not a theist, because it seems like you're just kind of going through the motions and acting as though their beliefs don't matter. And they matter to them, so it seems to me more respectful to not bow your head if everyone's praying. But I always, and this situation is really the first time I did it, I always take a look around to see if anybody else is not bowing their head. And there's a little expression of, look, eye contact of, yeah, how you doing? At that moment. And I find that, I don't know, uplifting to see that there are other people out there that are sort of following things the same way, that they're not going to be disrespectful. They're not going to pick fights with people, especially not, at a family affair, not going to question other people, but they're just not going to participate.
Right, and I'm trying not to be a dick. That is my fundamental goal.
Hey, that's mine as well.
Yeah.
And am I a dick if I don't grab your hand as we pray over Thanksgiving dinner at my brother's house? I'm not sure. I've decided not to do that, but that is something as an atheist that I have thought about probably way too much.
Actually, I have never heard it that way, that it shows more respect not to bow your head, but I really like that sentiment, because you are showing more respect to their tradition by not imitating it for no reason, just out of social familiarity. I like that a lot. But you point out another good thing, have another good point, which is that being an atheist, it really does come up in every interaction, because you debate whether or not, if something comes up, whether or not to discuss it and how to approach it. And for me, anybody who asks what I do for a living, it automatically comes up, and I have to choose right there whether or not to say, let's move past that and talk about something else, or go into some detail. And I know that mine's an extreme case, but you guys obviously have the same issues as well, where you meet a new group of people or something comes up in a familiar setting and you don't know how to. Somebody assumes you're religious, for example. That happens a lot as well. And you have to know whether or not to say, oh, I'm actually not, or to just let them continue thinking that.
Yeah. And just one more opportunity here just to plug a little bit. I know it's available at Amazon, and you can actually get the Kindle edition. The Kindle edition is quite affordable. So folks out there that are on the fence about Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist, the guide to coming out as a non-believer, the Kindle edition is only $4.99. It's actually very nice. I've got a Kindle myself, and they work quite well. I actually found it was much easier to read when I transferred the book over onto the Kindle, and it's pretty easy. It's convenient. The book is in depth, but it's not particularly long. It's not a huge tome that you've got to, it's not going to require a lot of you. But there are a lot of things, and not just, again, for folks that haven't come out, but also for folks, non-believers, and I think believers with a family member, somebody that they know that they've met that's, not a believer that they don't understand. It actually works quite well for folks like that. So it actually, I think, would make a good gift for folks that came out recently and their families are still giving perhaps the cold shoulder, but tolerating them at family events, that sort of thing. It's pretty revealing, and I think it's got a much wider audience than the title actually gives it.
I would certainly agree. I would say, whether you're an atheist and agnostic because you're an idiot or don't know what that word means, or even an atheist who has an atheist family member, friend, something like that, I think the book is a good starting point for the whole research into understanding atheism or lack of a theology.
Mm-hmm. It's a good springboard. It's a good starting off point, specifically because it's not disproving Christianity is a little bit more aggressive, specifically against Christianity, which is more of a change your way of thinking sort of book. Whereas Mom, Dad, I'm an Atheist really does seem to be, look, we don't eat babies and worship the devil. And here are some of the issues that were raised for us, which is why we
don't.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Paul does.
Well, Paul does, but that's not because he's an atheist. It's because he's a jackass.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And also, I'm Polish.
Yes, that's your mistake right there. You shouldn't have been Polish.
Yeah, no, that's my problem.
But no, I think the book has a fantastically wide usability, and it really is just a good read. So anybody that's out there that would like to pick up a copy of it again. You can get a paperback or the Kindle edition, and it really is, it's enjoyable to read, and it's got a lot of good information. But let me ask you, David, are you working on anything else? Do you have anything that's coming down the pipeline?
What's next?
I have another project going on that I actually just began very recently, and I'm pretty excited about it, so you guys will get the first sneak peek into what I have going on, because I haven't told anyone else yet.
Oh, good deal.
So I've been doing a lot of research into other traditions, into supernatural, other things other than religion, so psychics and ghosts and astrology and basically everything. So I'm going to put together a book where I experience each one of those in depth, where I go to a psychic. I'm actually planning on going to 3 or 4. I went to the Scientology headquarters in Los Angeles and got a stress test and interviewed one of the Scientology associates there.
Oh, really?
Do you have thetans? You have thetans?
I do, yeah. I'm very depressed. I have a high IQ, but I'm very depressed, they said, and that's a dangerous combination.
Well, you can get rid of that for a
nominal fee,
$100,000.
$100,000, yeah, exactly. And I've had a lot of other cool experiences like that, going to the Creation Museum, and I'm going to compile all those experiences into a book about skepticism in all those areas, because previously my books have just dealt with religion, and I wanted to show that although that's what I'm an activist against the most because it causes the most harm, I want to show that skepticism is important and evidence-based reasoning is important, and so that's what the next project's going to be on.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on. What we're going to do is we're going to take a short break here and promote some stuff that is mostly us, and then we'll come back and we'll fight you about cheese.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Do you have questions, comments, concerns, or random musings? Email us at reason@wnyatheist.org. Out of boredom, you should check us out on Twitter and follow at Reason Podcast. We appreciate it when folks retweet us because it makes us feel smart and important. Listen live Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern on blogtalkradio.com. Call in, join the conversation at 424-243-9589. Can't listen live on Sundays because you're too busy praying to whatever gods you believe in? We are also on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and you can download the show from wnyatheist.org/reason.php. Find us on Facebook at Reason Podcast, and go ahead and like us. We'll take your liking us as loving us, and that will sufficiently satisfy our egos. We know you're out there, we know you're listening, and we appreciate it more than these words can say.
All right, now we're back, and as any regular listener to the show knows, we like to close out the show with an argument, and we try and keep it light, but we try to exercise rhetoric.
Well, I think today we have a very important, not just important, which I've said before, very important topic.
It's a monumental topic. It's one that's troubled me for years, and I know it's troubled Paul, and I'm assuming that David is going to have a tremendous amount to say about it.
Of course.
You mean David, not Potato McButternutworth.
It's not going to fly. You're just going to need to give that one up. It's not going to work for you.
I'm trying so hard.
What we do is we have a guest on, and generally Paul and I argue. I've argued a couple of times with DW, but when we have a guest on, we, as in Fight Club, if it's your first time on the podcast, you have to fight. So I'm going to flip a coin here to find out whether you're going to be arguing against Paul or myself.
And before we do so, David, I would like to declare you should be concerned because every single time that Josh and I have gotten into an argument, I have won.
Yes, that would be the claim.
Sure,
Paul has made.
Sure.
Did you not hear the thing about the deer who are made of cement pillars?
Oh, that was a good argument. That's a good point.
It was a solid argument. Yes, sometimes they become a little absurd.
All right. Well, the topic for today is, as I expressed, I think a more significant one than most. I think the issue of whether or not cheddar versus mozzarella. That is the issue.
The wording is going to be cheddar is a superior cheese than mozzarella. And let's flip a coin to find out if you're going to be arguing against Paul, who claims to be the reigning champion, or me, who actually is the reigning champion.
Or is just proclaiming that because he has a microphone.
I do. I have a microphone. It makes me sound smart and intelligent. So let's see. Paul, would you like to call it?
Sure. I will call heads.
Okay. Let's see. And it's heads. It's going to be Paul Whitmire as your unworthy adversary. And now, David,
right.
Would you like to call heads or tails? The affirmative is cheddar is a superior cheese than mozzarella. Heads being the affirmative, tails being the negative. And would you like the coin?
Yeah, I'll take tails.
Let's see what we've got here.
Wait.
So many choices.
And it's tails. You're going to be arguing that cheddar is not a superior cheese to mozzarella. Paul's going to be arguing that cheddar is a superior cheese, and since Paul has the affirmative, Paul can go first.
I would be happy to begin. Well, I will start off by saying, number one, Physics Vegan Brian declares that all cheese is the devil. And that's because he's a vegan, and fuck him.
Well said.
But ultimately, if I'm arguing that cheddar is better, which is not only true but also rhymes,
adds validity.
It really does. Cheddar is better in terms of melting. It's better for broccoli. It's better for any myriad of situations that you could involve cheese in. Now, mozzarella, yes. Go ahead. He's jumping right in.
I would like to see you put your cheddar on a pizza is all I'm going to interject there, but continue.
I have actually had cheddar on my pizza, and I have enjoyed it quite much.
English class, not as much as cheddar on his pizza.
I speak of the good. So ultimately, I would say that yes, okay. So you can do the whole yes, mozzarella is an important cheese for pizza, I guess, but you can have pizza with cheddar on it. You can have pizza with broccoli on it, but nobody in their right mind would ever try and combine mozzarella and broccoli. And I think that broccoli is the cornerstone of any nutritional diet that exists. And so therefore, cheddar is clearly the way to go.
All right. We have settled the question, what goes better with broccoli. Now let's settle the question about what goes better with anything else on earth, including pizza, including lasagna, including string cheese. Have you heard of cheddar string cheese? Nobody eats that. It's not even a thing. This debate would be more fun if I had a worthy debate, but mozzarella is clearly better. It's not even an option.
I do believe you just called me an unworthy adversary.
Snuck that one in there.
That
like
was
that.
Fighting words.
Really?
I inadvertently did. You are correct about that.
Okay, well, first off, string cheese, stupid. That's just a fact that everyone is fully. Look at David. He's over there rubbing his nose. He agrees.
I think
Actually, I very much disagree with you.
You don't think that string cheese is stupid? Did you not remember the part where I was punching you before the show?
I feel like he's on my side here is what's going on.
I haven't chosen sides yet. I just think that particular statement is incorrect.
He's a Christian.
It is incorrect because string cheese is not just good for children, you guys. They're good for adults as well. They make a healthy snack. They're not very expensive. You can get them in reduced fat. They're pretty good. I get them all the time.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Is string cheese anything more than mozzarella in tubular form?
It is not.
Aha! See?
It makes mozzarella better because it can be enjoyed by itself, whereas you need your broccoli and or some sandwich or something else. I can just enjoy my cheese by itself at a whim, and it makes a good breakfast, lunch, after dinner snack, anything.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that the fact that my cheese is amenable to accoutrement, amenable to different ingredients, means that it's bad, whereas your cheese, mozzarella, which is good for, I don't know, string cheese and pizza, and that's about all I can think of, is...
Are you knocking pizza?
I am knocking pizza.
Oh my gosh, you don't want to knock pizza. There's a whole new discussion at that point.
Mm-hmm. We are here in New York. We are only, 400 miles away from New York City?
Well, we're right between New York and Chicago, so we've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Pizza-wise.
And so we know pizza. And if there's one thing we know about pizza...
And you put cheddar on yours.
I do, because I put cheddar and taco meat, and I used to live in Arizona. Which
that makes a lot more sense now.
It actually, it really does.
I think that was a hidden insult there, and I think you should rethink that last statement there, Paul, before you respond, because I got to tell you, I think he holds my position on Arizona.
No, I'm correct. Do you see my Superman pose?
That's impressive.
It's radio, so no, you can't. But other than that, I would say the cheddar, in addition to being a wonderful side to broccoli, asparagus, anything else, is useful for its melty properties. It's very good on eggs. It's good on corned beef hash. See, can you make these claims for mozzarella? I'm just saying.
Not in every instance. However,
We
were talking about health food before when you were bringing up your delicious asparagus and broccoli examples. So I would just like to point out that for a 100-gram serving of cheddar cheese and mozzarella, 400 calories for cheddar, 300 for mozzarella. So you're and actually almost twice the amount of fat. So it's a healthier cheese. Mozzarella is healthier. It's works on more things, on better things, on pizza and lasagna versus asparagus and broccoli. It's inexpensive. It can be enjoyed by itself. It's not necessary to have it with something else like it is with cheddar cheese. So I think on all counts, we can all agree here that mozzarella is superior cheese, especially when made with whole milk.
Okay, well, you're making a common mistake, sir. Your common mistake is that calories are somehow negative or bad for you, whereas calories are actually the fundamental driving force for our existence. If you don't consume enough calories, you will die. So therefore, according to your argument, cheddar is clearly better. And the reason why is because it allows you to collect more of the necessary carbohydrates, proteins, and fats that allow you to function and exist as a human being. Now, you by your own description, you've described mozzarella is not nearly as healthy as cheddar cheese is because cheddar cheese is more nutritionally valuable. Is a phrase I made up.
That makes a lot of sense under the understanding that Crisco oil would also be healthy because it has more calories than cheddar cheese.
Which it
but
would.
If you look at carbohydrates, fat content, and protein, mozzarella is better across the board. So although it has fewer calories, and I would consider that a positive, it is also superior in other categories.
Well, it sounds to me like you are taking the perspective of Physics Vegan Brian, a listener to our show, and also you're just a goddamn hippie. Ooh. Goddamn hippies and their lower calories, and you shouldn't have fat, and this is why I think that cheddar's better.
Mm-hmm. A hippie would have never recommended the mozzarella cheese be made with whole milk, as I did. So that refutes your claim.
Well, all right.
All right. We'd like to know what you think. You can, if you have a position on which cheese is superior.
Cheddar.
I think we've established
mozzarella.
Yours.
Mozzarella.
Please email us at reason@wnyatheist.org, or you can call in next time and mock Paul for his poor showing today.
It was a brilliant showing. I've proved conclusively and without a doubt that cheddar is better, and it rhymes.
It's very clear.
Yes. So
I even converted the church boy.
That was sarcasm.
Paul is a little dense for that. All right. Thank you very, very much. David, before we let you go, did you have any last words or, anything else you'd like to offer up to us?
I just want to say thank you guys very much for having me on. I really appreciate it and looking forward to being on again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. And also, anytime you're coming out with new stuff, let us know. We'd be happy to have you on.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a nice one.
You too.
All right. Well, thanks for staying with us to the bottom of another episode of Reason Podcast. Next week, we are going to be talking about the very important topic of black holes.
Except that we're not.
Oh my God, I fucked it up.
Again. No, next week we're beginning the first part in our 44, possibly 45, depending on how long it takes, part series.
47?
I don't think it'll take quite that long. The Presidents. The following week, we will be looking into black holes.
We have a plan. We're incredibly disorganized, but there's a plan.
No, Paul just writes things down incorrectly.
I actually really do.
And by plan, you mean after 50 presidents?
No, by plan, I mean I'm thoroughly incompetent.
Yes, so next week we'll be discussing George Washington, our first president, who would have been King George if it were not for him. There'll be a fair amount of information that I think has been ignored by most of the history books, so it'll be a little something to tune into, along with a little bit of general information about good old Georgie Porgy. Any last words there, Paul, before we let these fine folks get on with their lives?
Okay, if I point at David, will he say the right word? Let's see.
I think he will.
Oh my God!
I'll give it a try. I'm going to go with Purkinje fibers.
There you go.
Oh.
It's a callback to a prior show, my friend.
My brain's not working.
Stay on the ball, man.
I thought you were, because of the whole thing about the Potato McButterworth, that's what was on my mind. But I'm like, I'm not saying it.
You're not saying Potato McButterworth?
No.
It's the greatest name ever.
No, sir. No, sir. I think you gave it a valiant effort. You gave it the old college try, but sadly, I'm going to say you failed with your Potato McButterworth. That has not flown today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure the only thing we can conclude is that the worst name ever is Paul Jedediah Whitmire.
Yes, indeed.
Which, coincidentally, is not my name. All right.
We'll leave the audience with that.
Join us next week for a discussion about George Washington. All right. Farewell.
Have a nice one.
Goodbye.